This podcast is a uniting heart and soul production and was recorded on land that was stolen nearly 250 years ago. This particular episode was recorded on the land occupied by the Gadigal clan of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and we acknowledge that sovereignty over these lands was never ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. At Filthy Hope, we humbly contribute to the ancient and ongoing traditions of storytelling when we share stories on this podcast. Hey guys, just before we dive into this week's episode with Sarah Rose, I do have to give you a quick heads up. There is a fair amount of bad language in this episode, so if you find that offensive, this might be an episode to skip. But also, on this week's episode, we touch on topics of mental illness, sexual abuse, and eating disorders. So if any of those subjects are particularly challenging or triggering for you, please look after yourself if you decide to listen. There are a number of mental health resources in the show notes of this podcast, but always remember that if you or anybody that you know is at immediate risk, you can call LifeLine on 13 11 14 or emergency services. In Australia, you can contact emergency services by dialing 000. That's all. We love you. We appreciate you. Enjoy the episode.
For me, because maybe I was still, keep in mind I'm doing like 12-hour days of just athlete, like intense. And because I was still having a protein bar for lunch, I was fine. I was still eating. You know the show Dance Mums?
Yeah.
It seems so fake. It's fucking not fake.
It's not fake.
It's like, as a 10-year-old, I would have parents block in my mum with tables and chairs to talk shit about her, to try and get in my head before I went on stage.
Welcome back to another episode of Filthy Hope.
Woohoo!
As always,
Yay,
I'm your
yay,
host,
yay.
Jonty, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ness.
High five, brother. Never get to sit this close to you.
I know, it's weird.
I feel like I can pat you. So cool.
The reason we are sitting this close
I
is
know.
because we have a very special guest, Sarah Rose. Welcome to the show.
Sarah, clap, track, clap, track. Do it, Jonty.
I do it later, Ness.
I
You hear it.
Oh, there it goes.
Yeah. So if it's your first time here, this is joining us on the podcast. This is the podcast that loves spending time in the grey spaces where Jesus, life, and culture intersect. So, Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I'm really humbled and excited to be sitting down here for that conversation today.
Yeah. Oh, we're super
Pumped.
excited to have you. For context, do you maybe want to explain how we know?
Yeah.
Sarah?
Well, Sarah is, I don't want to give too much away at the start, but Sarah is an athlete, a professional athlete and a professional artist. And we've had artists on the show, but I think Sarah is our very first athlete artist. Dun, dun, dun. So it's
Pretty
very
awesome.
exciting. I can't wait to rip into her story. It's
Absolutely.
a kick-ass story. It's a powerful female story, and it's a survivor, thriver story. So tune in, friends. She is just a powerhouse, and you will learn a lot through the wisdom of this very young, precious soul at the bench today.
No pressure.
Yeah. And we met Sarah, of course, through church, which was amazing. Sarah came into church one day and she became one of our precious peeps.
About a year ago today, actually.
Is it, mate?
It was the 19th of June.
Wow.
Oh, my God. It's
the
our wedding
year.
anniversary.
It is.
Oh, my gosh. We need to do champs.
I know, right? Are you providing?
I think that's, yes.
We should do more booze on this show.
I think so. That's right. Oh,
So
it's
can
a
we just
year.
pause and we'll go grab some mimosas? And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
sounds like a really good idea.
Genuinely would not be mad if we did that. Before we dive in, you said you had a disclaimer you wanted to say up front, so we can get that out of the way.
Yes. Yeah. So I do have a bit of a disclaimer. So just like you guys said, this is a podcast all about the grey spaces. And as Ness said, I am an artist and an athlete. And for me, that intersects in the dance industry, amongst other areas. And the dance industry, in my personal experience, is one of the greyest spaces you can possibly find.
Interesting.
So just like anything in life, there is light, there is shade, and there is the good and the bad and the ugly and the traumatic and the beautiful and the everything in between. As much as this is, a Christian podcast, I do also very much see it as a shame-free trauma podcast, which means So I know that we will go there today, and I'm pumped and I'm ready for that. But I do want to give a disclaimer to everyone out there, any budding young dancers or anyone who may have shared experiences from my story, that even if we are talking about more of the grey and the darker side today, there is a lot of light in ballet, in the dance world in general, but it is not one or the other. And it is so easy, and I am so guilty of thinking of it on different days as either this really beautiful thing in my life or this really traumatic, hard thing that sucked my soul.
Yep.
And it's neither, it's both. And a lot of the work I do in life is holding the mix. And some days I'm better at that than others, because it is a lot easier to think of it as one or the other. It takes a lot more energy and realism to think about it as both. So no matter what side we end up talking about today, I do want to put it out there that everyone's experience, though we may have a lot of shared experiences, is slightly different, and it is grey. This is not a good thing. This is not a bad thing. This is just my story, the good, the bad, and everything in between.
It's wonderful.
I love that. That's like when I think about this show and what this is here for, is about holding tension. Like two truths can be true at the same time, and being able to go, yeah, something's shit, but also it's also can be amazing at the same time, and they don't discount one another. They can coexist.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that, because that paints this, it sets us up really well, hopefully, to dive into some grey, which I'm really excited for.
And
Just hoping.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know, Sarah. I know we're going there. It's like, hold on, people, strap in. It's going to be a roller coaster.
Buckle up, bitches.
Yeah, buckle up, bitches. That's right. And I think it's true to the anxiety story. On this pod, we often talk about mental health. Yep. And I know we're going to touch on some of that today too, Sarah. But I know that something that was really important for me on my mental health journey was understanding that we are capable of feeling more than one thing at any given time.
Oh, yeah.
Can't you? So you can have a moment of feeling extremely anxious and then also feel extreme love, happiness and joy. Or you could feel extremely down and low but still see light in there. So that's the beautiful thing about the created human being. We are complex units. Some would say moon units.
I remember being 10 years old and writing in some random school essay, she had a concoction of emotions.
Oh, wow.
It's so dramatic.
Big word for a little kid.
It's stuck with me ever since. And that's my thing. Sometimes I'm lying there at night, it's 4 a.m, I'm sparring, I'm like, you're just having a concoction of emotions. Yeah.
Great, Sarah.
So, Sarah, let's dive over into your story. I'm curious, where would you like to start? I mean, I'm sure we won't even scratch the surface. We'll probably talk for a while, and there's a multitude of things we could talk about. So where would you like to start?
Gosh, I mean, I think, like you said, there are so many places I can start in my story, because it all feels so interconnected and intertwined that one point leads to every other point. So, I mean, I'm happy to start wherever you guys wish.
I've got to start.
You've got to start?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So I want to ask you this, because I know this is going to lead you into all the different places. On your magnificent professional Instagram page, there is this absolutely stunning shot of you at the French ambassador's residence in Washington, D.C. You're in this exquisite tutu with all sorts of if you think of Swan Lake or Giselle or any of the beautiful big ballets, you look like you're in one of those frocks and you've got the whole thing going on and you're in the beautiful pose. If you could see me on YouTube, I'm doing the pose. And you're there looking just $1,000,000. How the hell does a young girl end up with the French ambassador in DC, USA?
Well, I would have been about 18, 17, probably 17 there. So I had just moved to America. So I had gone over to dance with the Washington Ballet in DC. So at that point, I was still in the professional track program, but I was lucky enough to be dancing with the quarter ballet in the company's Nutcracker season. So 42 shows of Nutcracker every December. First, I guess, like professional quarter ballet gig. So it was a baptism of fire, but one that I'm grateful for. And that was one of my night off from the shows. And the company had been asked to send some dancers for like the big Christmas soiree, you know, like the big fancy thing with all the diplomats in DC. And I don't know, DC kind of reminds me of Double Bay a little bit. Like it's like fancy people. And you kind of walk in and they have like these massive Christmas trees set up everywhere. Now, Ness knows I am about as big of a Christmas nut as you can get. So I am having like an absolute fit over the amount of just like Christmas shit around me. And yeah, those tutus were actually from Sleeping Beauty. So one of the classical ballets, like you mentioned. And essentially, we got asked to go in and there were all these diplomatic guests and the company asked me to go be one of the representatives. So RBJ, people like that were there and I got to be at the door and meet them. And then we were dancing around the Christmas trees for all the guests. And we thought we were just going to be like bourreeing and stuff, which for those of you who don't know, you pretty much like stand on the spot on your toes and just like twiddle your feet. And then we got told, oh, actually, can you dance around? Here's some music with like 2 seconds notice.
Wow.
All these diplomats there. So you end up just kind of dancing around and then all of a sudden the music fades and you're just trying to find a pose and that's when that ends up happening. And then we had to just kind of hobnob and I got to meet some amazing people. And this building is just like... and then, went home and got ready to head back to the theatre for the next Nutcracker show.
And the Nutcracker image that I'm looking at, you're in this beautiful icy blue, beautiful dress with some beautiful, gorgeous stuff on your head. Tell us about that.
So that one would be snow. So I think I was like Snow Flurry 10.
How many flurries were there?
I think there's like 12 snow flurries, but there's multiple casts. So essentially that was my into professional life, that dance. I was in company rehearsal. I had been training with the school and then they sent those of us in PTPA, which is like the last school year or last training pre-professional program. Over to the company quarter ballet rehearsals, and I had just moved to America. I had just gone over for the summer intensive, spent 5 weeks training there and was lucky enough to be offered a year-round position. So came home, had like 2 weeks to get a visa, pack up my life and move to the US at 17.
Good heavens.
By myself. And I was just settling in. We got sent over to the company rehearsal in the main building. And Julie Kent, who is the longest standing principal artist of American Ballet Theatre, was the artistic director of Washington Ballet at that time. And she had taught me during the summer intensive. So we get pulled into the rehearsal and they're calling out casts. So usually in professional shows, particularly when you have multiple shows happening, you'll have like 2 or 3, sometimes even 4 casts of the same roles, so that people get breaks, so that they can alternate. Otherwise, you just break. Like you cannot go out there and do 42 shows straight. Like you would just be in a heap on the floor.
Do you stick with your same company?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all
so
of
don't
it,
interchange the artists.
Yeah. So you're like contracted artists within the company, and then each show casting comes out.
Oh wow.
For like who's doing what. So at this point, though, I wasn't an artist with the company. I was still in the pre-professional year, but just kind of going to understudy. And then Miss Kent was calling out casting for the first, or it wasn't even casting at that point, it's what's called a learning group. So they're kind of like, we think these people might work together, learn these roles, and then like a week before the shows start, the casting list will be put up and you'll find out if you're actually going to dance that role.
Good heavens.
And that kind of stuff. So the dance world is very much, you're never quite certain. You're always on rocky ground. So even if you're in a learning group, you don't know you're going to get on stage. And even Nutcracker, casting would come out every week. So you might know, okay, I'm going to dance in the first week, but then you better hope you dance fucking well so that you get put back in the second week.
Is that right? And is it about that, Sarah? Like they're watching your every move?
Oh, yeah, the staff are in the audience every show.
Wow.
And
the pressure.
Yeah. And, I was very lucky and blessed, and we had some beautiful staff members there, and Julie gave me my shot in that rehearsal. They were calling out casting, and there was one snow flurry that she called out, and everyone realised that she was injured and the casting hadn't been replaced. And Miss Kent looked around the room, which is kind of rare, so I'm very grateful, and just looked at me and said, Sarah Rose, why don't you give it a crack? And I came in, so it was my first ever full company rehearsal. I was in cast 3, so I had the first 2 casts to watch of this like 7-minute piece to try and it's snow is all, because it's snow flurries, it's just mini jumps, fast feet, pattern changes, just like 7 minutes of go, 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 not quite knowing where you're looking. And I'm just standing at the back trying to pick up this routine to jump in with the other company members who had been doing this dance for 10 years, doing their spots for 10 years.
Gosh.
So it wasn't being taught to me. It was very much, and that's company life. I was looking, figuring out the choreography, figuring out the spots, trying to pick it up. And then I think that was a 3-hour rehearsal, usually quarter ballet rehearsals. So then the last little bit, they were like, cast 3, let's go. I remember looking up and doing a fucking sign of the cross and going, Lord be with me.
Wow.
Jumped in and somehow pulled it out my ass. And
And mum and dad never got to watch.
Dad actually came over my first season, my first Nutcracker season, because that was when I was baptised. So Dad came over for my baptism, but we were snowed out, so the baptism couldn't go ahead. And so I was baptised when Dad was back in Australia. But he had come over for that and to see me in my first quarter ballet role. But my mum and my sister didn't get to come over. They had grown up with me growing up, dancing since I was 5, performing since I was 5. They were lucky enough to... sorry, that was the wrong way around. I was lucky enough to have had them in the audience. That whole time. But yeah, Dad was the only family member who saw me dance professionally in America.
That's extraordinary. And so did you do, was it 12 months you were there?
2 years.
2 years in DC.
2 years. So it was broken up though, because the first year I was there just 11 months straight. So I moved there 2 weeks notice and I didn't get back to Australia for about 11 months. Dance did a full season and then unfortunately got injured. So I had an ankle injury since I was about 14. I had what's called an osteogonum, so it was like an extra little bone in the back of my ankle. And every time I went up on point, it would get jammed. And I was physioing and rehabbing and just monitoring and managing. But my workload in America was huge. The hours and days I was pulling were ridiculous, to be honest. Not feasible for my body.
17-year-old professional athlete, plucked out of home, thrust overseas, no family support. How the hell did you pull that shit off, girl? How did you not fall apart?
Who says I didn't?
Yeah, wow.
I think it's cultural, like very cultural. In dance, many people move overseas at 16 or 17, so my friends were doing it. It had been around me. I was used to it. Granted, most people go to schools and like lodgings that have boarding houses and boarding schools. I was just living in an apartment.
Wow.
Kind of just living life.
In a big city at 17, you can't drink in the US at 17. You're just still a kid in the eyes of the law of the US.
Yeah.
You know?
Still very much a kid. And a lot that had happened in my life that I wasn't ready to face.
That's right.
I think you asked how I did it. I think it was easier to run.
Yeah. Because there was trauma at home.
There was trauma in Melbourne and trigger warning, which I'm sure we'll give at the beginning, but for sexual assault, I had just been sexually assaulted when I moved to America.
Yeah, how old you were?
17.
Yeah.
I moved to America within probably a month of being sexually assaulted.
Unprocessed.
And wasn't
trauma.
Able to admit that I was sexually assaulted. I, had kept the person in my life and made a billion excuses. Yeah. So it was easier to be able to have them in my life and put physical distance between me and them. Was my way of keeping me safe. Looking back now, I can see how hard I was trying to keep myself safe, even if I didn't know, necessarily the best ways to do it. And even if I'm lucky enough to have a lot more tools now, I think moving to America was very much my safety mechanisms and my brain doing what it could. I also think ballet was my refuge. It was what I had decided when I was 5, and I'm pretty headstrong. Like, when I decide I want something, I go for it. Yeah. And I was not born with the ballet body. I was constantly told I would never make it. I didn't have the turnout. I didn't have the feet. My waist was too big.
Good heavens.
My face was too round. I didn't have the hyperextension. I had man hands.
Oh my gosh.
And you've got the passion and the drive, sweetheart, but I just don't know that your body's the right one.
Wow.
And so I was just going to do whatever the fuck it took to get this career. And I'd wanted it my entire life. I do not remember a moment of my existence where I didn't want to be a ballerina. It was in my bones. Even stories I'm told from when I was a kid. And this was the next step. This was going to give me a career, and I was going to do whatever it took to get this career. Yeah. And that was the mindset I had. So
Sarah, do you, having worked as an actor in my younger years and also not as a professional ballerina, but I did Shiketti till I was 19, and I have danced professionally, not in a ballet company, but TV commercials and all sorts of different interesting things. The body image palaver that goes on in the artistic world is just horrific.
Oh yeah.
How did you manage or not manage that piece? Because can I disclose that when you arrived today, for somebody that's lived in the ballet world that to me looks like a magnificent stick creature, can I say that? Is that rude? Do you see that's rude? I said magnificent stick creature.
I don't see it as rude because it's coming from you and I know you.
Oh, thank the Lord.
Have usually a blanket rule that no one's allowed to comment on my body.
Oh, wow.
But
there's let me reframe. It's a musculoskeletal mass of loveliness that is really lean. How's that? That's better.
Sure.
That's much more intelligent. Definitely.
Definitely not the person to be asking. So don't look at me.
I'm just thinking, so the pressure, Sarah, you talked about your waist being too big. When I look at your little tiny petite frame, how is that a thing? How is that not psychopathic in nature for somebody to say that?
Because it is psychopathic in nature.
Yeah, there we go. I feel better now.
And it is fucked. It's so fucked. People are fucked in the head. Can I say that?
Yeah.
Like, God, the dance world in general, everyone says it's getting better. I'm so fucking sick of hearing people say it's getting better.
There's Event Central we should have used.
Yeah.
It's maybe in some instances and in some ways, and yes, some companies, it is getting better. For me, I had to remove myself from the world and the path I was on. COVID also did a fair amount of that for me. So thanks, COVID. Kind of took away my life, but that's fine because we're here now. Yeah. And where I'm at now is very supportive, but that's very, very rare. And the comments that were made to me as a child, a fucking child.
About your body?
About my body. About,
As a dancer, a dancer's body?
Yeah. A dancer's body, both, that and even culturally, but like, God, I look back And sometimes I think about those first blood test results when I really started to see that the disordered eating had taken a real nasty grip on my life and had caused a lot of damage.
How old were you, babe?
That was when I came back to Australia because of COVID and was injured, and I got sent for a bunch of blood tests because I had just had injury after injury.
Yeah.
And I would have been
19,
just turned 19. I don't get me wrong, I'd had disordered eating since I was like probably 13.
And do you think that came from the ballet world or dysfunction at home or things that people had said to you? Can you put a finger on that?
I think it was
Is there a moment?
real culmination of a bunch of different things. I think the dance world and the aesthetic that we're shown, but also being outright told to lose weight.
Wow.
And, you know, there were comments like, I'm probably 14 years old, 15 years old. So, you know, starting to go through puberty and all that stuff. And
get your boobs.
Yeah.
All the equipment.
Yep. And oh God, I was terrified of that as a little dancer.
Yeah.
God, I remember getting my period and thinking, fuck, I'm going to get boobs
now.
now.
Yeah.
My career's over. What the fuck am I going to
do with boobs?
I know.
As a ballerina.
I know.
Yeah.
And I remember being told, probably like 15 years old, one day in the studio, I'm so glad I'm starting to see a waist back on you. I was getting worried for a minute there. Or like a lot of assessments, end of year assessments. If a career in dance is to be realised, you must work on the shape of your legs.
Oh, good heavens.
And it was both that and, you know, there are members, a decent amount of members within my extended family with mental health and substance abuse struggles, and part of that is disordered eating mentalities. So I was around it. You're also around every other kid in full-time ballet training. When you're at the studio all day, every day, you do not go to school, schooling is online. The people you are around, the only people you see are the people in that same culture.
So everyone's tiny.
So it's so normal.
And is everybody not eating a lot of calories?
Yeah, and like teachers would look at what you were eating and like you would see all your friends barely eating and it would be constant conversation around it. It was all it was, and it was so normal that for me, because I still ate something, so maybe for lunch, I will give it a minute here. If any of you are struggling with disordered eating, I'm probably about to go into some things that I used to do. I know it is tough and you're probably really going to want to listen to all the tips and tricks I'm about to give you, but I'm telling you they don't work. And if you were still in that place, I'd probably recommend skipping forward just a minute so I don't give you any really great ideas.
I can put a timestamp in.
Yeah. So I don't give you any super great ideas here.
Yeah,
but
and also have a look down in our show notes about how to access some help.
Yeah, 100%. But like for me, because maybe I was still, you know, keep in mind I'm doing like 12-hour days of just athlete, like intense. And because I was still having a protein bar for lunch, I was fine. I was still eating. So I was normal.
Yeah, hang on. But you had a protein bar for lunch.
Yeah.
That wasn't morning tea.
No, that was lunch. So sometimes an apple, if I'd had a really big rehearsal, an apple and a protein bar. Or I remember trying really hard, or some days, if I thought I had massive, massive rehearsals, I'd let myself have some chickpeas in a salad. Because, you know, chickpeas were carbs, but not olive oil.
Yeah, wow, mate.
Now,
I don't know how your brain functioned.
It didn't.
12 hours of that massive output of explosive energy in a ballet studio to take in, less than 1,000 calories.
Yeah, and then
it's just horrific.
At the same point, be sat down by a member of staff and be told, as I'm coming back to Australia for ankle surgery, and this member of staff is no longer working at the institution, and I won't say the institution, but she sat me down and first was kind of pissed because it meant she had to redo casting because I had to go have ankle surgery. I'm so sorry to inconvenience your life there, babe. And then let her know. And the next thing I got told was, well, maybe this would be a good opportunity for you to get your weight under control.
Wow.
And her advice, really, really sage advice here, was try exercising and maybe you just like don't eat Maccas.
Right.
And so I'm coming home for ankle surgery where I'm about to be completely immobilized. And so, of course, you know, now I've got the calorie tracker apps. My surgery recovery took triple the time it should have because I'm counting how many crackers I can be eating because I'm only sitting on a couch.
Your body's not getting any nutrients to heal.
I'm depressed as fuck because I cannot produce serotonin anymore.
Yep.
My sleep schedule, particularly, you know, when I was living away, was out the goddamn window because I stopped producing melatonin, stopped producing serotonin. My thyroid was no longer functioning like it should have. I had oligomenorrhea, which means
Sarah.
Yeah, so that means that I was getting only 9 periods a year, so that's just borderline of like losing your period. And at the same time, endometriosis, so horrific periods when they did come. And my body, I was just getting, you know, I have had stress fractures in my bones because my bone density got low. I'm still trying to recover my bone density to this day. I'm so grateful, and it's by, you know, the grace of God that I caught it when I did. And that was very lined up because it wasn't that I was intentionally thinking I was fucking over my body. I genuinely thought I was fine because when you're in that environment where people are eating nothing, I'm eating a protein bar and an apple.
So you're smashing it.
I'm smashing it. I am fueling my goddamn body.
Yeah, wow.
And so
do you think the others were fueling their bodies secretly? They had to be. Sarah, we're just not capable of smashing out 12 hours of intense movement pattern with 0 caloric intake, though.
You have no idea what a ballerina is capable of. We are taught discipline, and you keep going and you dance through pain, and that is starting to get better. And I think after
But
COVID,
you must chew up your glycogen stores and eat your own muscle.
Yeah, you've got no glycogen stores. You start to pull things from your bone, from your muscle.
Horrific.
Hence why I started to get stress fractures. Your brain can't function. And any brain, I was always that kid who could pick up the choreography like that.
Right.
So that was the thing I needed to keep because in my brain, that was the only thing I had going for me as a ballerina. I just thought I was a trash dancer. And the only thing I had going for me was that I could pick up choreography and, you know.
And that's a skill.
And be a respectful little people-pleasing goody-goody who could do whatever anyone wanted with a smile on my face. You know, it doesn't matter that I'd just been sexually assaulted or that, you know, I had other stuff. No one knew, so that's not their problem. But like, so no, I think people can go, and any of my brain energy would just go towards picking up choreography, eat whatever I needed just to keep that alive. And others would do the same.
Yeah, yeah. Because you came in today, and I alluded to this earlier, for somebody who has disordered eating, Sarah turns up with 2 bags of lollies, and I'm going, yeah, bring that shit on. Yes, totally talking my love language. But she comes in with it and then starts like killing it, you know, throwing it back. And I'm going, how do you do that with that tiny little body? It goes straight to my ass, and I become like, you know, who's that reverend on TV that I say that I am? What's her
Joyce
name?
Meyer?
No. Joyce is lean.
That wasn't a comment on her. That's who you talk about all the time.
Yeah, the Vicar of Dibley.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
I love that show. Fuck, that's a good show.
She's great. Yeah.
No comment on Joyce Meyer, by the way. That's just who I thought you might have been talking
No,
about.
we love Joycey. Joycey's lean. Yeah. Oh, Sarah, it's a massive story. How do you, in the midst of post-traumatic stress, you've been sexually assaulted, you're a kid, you leave your support network of Australia, you fly to the US and you take on this new training and professional career, and how do you start to compartmentalise what had happened to you and then get out on stage and be snowflake number 10? How do you get out and be her without angry face on?
Because it's what I was trained to do.
Yeah.
From the age of 5. I was trained to be a performer. I think that, and also, and if you can't tell by now, I don't give short answers to questions because everything is complicated. But I think it comes from, I also had CPTSD already at that point. Not that I was aware of it, from many different circumstances.
Can you explain what that is?
CPTSD is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's not from an acute event. It's from ongoing psychological abuse and ongoing events. And I had experiences of CPTSD, I tend to say, for me, I experience PTSD, I experience OCD, things like that when I talk, because it externalizes it for me and it helps it feel like it's not my identity, because it's not.
Great.
So when I say I experience CPTSD, yes, I have CPTSD, but for me it is one experience and one lens through which I view the world.
That's fantastic to describe it like that.
Which is why I am phrasing it in this way.
So you're not Sarah CPTSD.
No, because
Yeah, I love that.
like I can say, I could sit here very easily and I could say, hi, I'm Sarah Grace Stephanie Rose. I was still am, a professional dancer. I have 4 jobs. I had an academic scholarship to one of the top high schools. I'm a PK, I'm XYZ, I'm a puppy mum, and say all that stuff. Or I could sit here and say, hi, I'm Sarah. I have CPTSD. I have OCD tendencies. I'm a perfectionist. I have debilitating anxiety. I have depression. I'm a sexual assault survivor. And that feels like a lot. And both are true. Both are completely true, because all that is real, but it's not one or the other. And it's a combination of both. So for me, I say I experience CPTSD because I do. My lens on this world is very much glassed over by that. But I experience CPTSD while being a professional dancer. I experienced OCD tendencies and perfectionism while holding a scholarship.
Yeah.
It's not mutually exclusive.
Can I ask you about that, the OCD tendencies and the perfectionism? Does that manifest like a coping mechanism for you?
Oh, yeah.
Because I know when I've often rung you at night and we've had chats late at night, you're in the cleaning phase.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And you're doing what I call psycho cleaning mama, and you're just going batshit crazy with the spray and wipe.
Yep.
Getting shit in order and cleaning up for your housemates. And I'm thinking, mate, fucking leave the housemates stuff alone. No, Ness, it's got to be done. Got to get it in order. It's got to be immaculate. Blah, 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 and off she's going. But it's helping you, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a strategy.
It's numbing, but it's also bringing me present, and it's something I can control.
Yeah.
So it can be a healthy coping mechanism. Look, it's better. I could be smashing back the cocaine instead.
Yeah, mate. And you got such a pretty nose. It's good that you're not.
I know.
Is that how you do cocaine up your nose?
Yes.
Yeah. See, how cool am I? Like,
So
I
cool,
knew
Ness.
that.
We'll have some Coke next week with the mimosas.
But I mean, not to take away, as I said, I have very real experiences of people with substance abuse disorder. I'm not making light of that at all. I do completely understand it is a very, very real thing, and the implications it has for both that person and the family around them. I am innately aware, which is why I joke about it, because you know me. I joke about trauma. It's my other coping mechanism.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a cleaning, it's a control. You've seen videos of me cleaning with a peppermint tea, organising my hair clips in size order at 3 a.m. because I can't sleep.
Yeah. It's seriously fucked up, sister.
Yeah.
Surely you can take a pill for that.
I do though. And I still do it.
I think that the control thing's interesting, because I guess if I can maybe pull on that thread a little bit, I think as someone who also experiences PTSD, the one of the things that in my experiences has given me more of a sense of calm or more of a sense of control is identifying the things that we can control and the things that we can't control. And it's really, really easy to get really wound up and scared or stressed or preoccupied with the things that we can't control, which, they're things that are worth thinking about, when it's actually often more helpful. And in my experience, you might resonate with this or not, being able to control things that we actually can control can be so empowering and so grounding. I don't know if that resonates with you, or if your experience with that is similar, or
that definitely resonates with me. It's if I can create order, if there is something in my reality that I have control over, that's where dance came into play. It's very it can be very perfectionistic, and it's the chicken or the egg. Does dance attract people who already have perfectionistic tendencies and prey on that, or does it create it? For me, I think it was already within, and the environment allowed me to really blow that into unhealthy proportions. Because just like anything, perfectionism can be great. Perfectionism has got me to some great places in this world. It's when it starts to go too far and it starts to detract. So that's when dance came in, because I was learning to control every single muscle of my body. Like, I was learning to control my entire environment. Or even, Ness, like you asked before, about the just being able to put it aside and go overseas, go on stage. I mean, that was already the PTSD. I was a brilliant fucking compartmentalizer. I mean, I still am to unhealthy levels. Like, I am not saying anyone should try for that. Like, God, I have been in my car on the phone with my psychotherapist having a session outside the dance studio, sobbing about my sexual assault, just starting to put the pieces together, and being at the front of the studio teaching 5 minutes later, acting completely normal. So PTSD, friends. But it was that, and it was also, you know the show Dance Mums? It seems so fake. It's fucking not fake.
It's not fake.
It's like, it's
Abby.
Yeah, but it's like, as a 10-year-old, like, I would have parents block in my mum with tables and chairs to talk shit about her, to try and get in my head before I went on stage, or like put in formal petitions claiming I like knew the adjudicators when I didn't, or sit in the audience and time me, and when I won championships, if I went 2 seconds over the time limit, they would have me disqualified so that the title would go to their daughter.
Oh, good heavens.
And this was like as a fucking child. So I was already very skilled at not letting anything onto the stage. So I guess that's how I did it.
Aurora, my daughter, loved dancing, and she would have loved to be a professional dancer, and she had this absolute bitch of a teacher in HSC who was going to be her dance teacher. She was taking dance as HSC subject, and she was such a cow, this woman, at beyond horrific.
So you're just explaining most dance teachers now?
Yeah, this woman was just
Sorry
cruel.
to all the great ones that I've had, by the way. There's some amazing ones out there.
There are, most definitely. Shout out to Jane Gray, Shiketti master. She's just was the best. Happy stories there I can share. But this woman that will remain unnamed was absolutely so deliberately cruel to Slink in year 12 that Aurora ended up dropping dance. And she came home and she said to me, Mum, I'm not going to be a dancer anymore. It can get fucked, because I'm going to do put all my energy into athletics, because what happens with athletics, you have a ready, set, go position and a finish line. The winner's the winner. The first fucker that crosses the line is the person that gets the trophy. In dance, you can be exceptional, and it is so subjective.
And it's political.
Yeah, definitely. I'd been at many performances when dancers, like you described, won these Stedfords, and Slink was performing in them. She was wonderful. Not that Slink necessarily should have won them, but certainly the ones that did win potentially shouldn't have, in my opinion. You know, and I think, wow, I got Slink's opinion, ready, set, go. The winner's the winner.
Oh, I've definitely thought the same.
So much better for your mental health.
Oh, yeah, because it's completely subjective. And particularly the more you chase a career, the more you are taught that your entire worth is dependent on everyone else's opinion of you, because they're the ones buying the tickets. They're the ones casting you. If you are trash in the staff's eyes, then you're trash. It's kind of what you're taught to believe, so that you're constantly chasing that external validation to an unhealthy level, because it's the only way that you can be validated within the arts world, unless you somehow find a way to say fuck you to the culture and find it within yourself. And that's something I'm working very hard on doing at the moment.
And it's similarly in the acting world, Sarah, because while the acting world takes in many different shapes and sizes of bodies, there is still a pressure to be, certainly when you're younger, there's a pressure to be a certain body type so that you win bigger, better, faster roles. Except that, here's a nod to the production, Tina Turner production that I just recently saw. every different shape and size athlete, artist on that stage. It was so good to see. It was so encouraging for all the young performers out there watching. Big girls, medium girls, little girls, big men, little men, tall men, wide men. It was just great. And they could all pirouette and they could all grand jeté, they could all do the moves and they all had the voice. It didn't matter what their body type was like. And that was encouraging. And I wonder if we're moving more to that area.
I think we are in some ways. I think at least it's being spoken about now. I think there is still a fucking long way to go.
Yeah.
I think some companies are getting there. I think some companies are still very far from it. Even now, some audition forms will ask you for your weight.
Wow.
Or they ask you for anything else, your weight and your height. I tend to not put in those applications, if I'm being honest, because that's not the kind of
The
environment.
acting casting sheets ask for weight as well.
Yeah.
Yep. I always lie.
Yeah. Oh, I just used to.
Always drop at 5K.
Oh, well, I haven't weighed myself now in probably close to 2 years, which is massive for me because that was my absolute obsession. I'd weigh myself like 4 times a day.
Wow.
I would calculate how much I would lose overnight because I would be able to figure that out. And it was just, I remember being injured and weighing myself and going, fuck, that's too much this morning, and making the bath like scalding hot. So there was steam everywhere, sitting in the bath till I felt like I was going to pass out.
Dehydrate yourself.
To get the sweat out, and then weighing myself again. And I wasn't even dancing at this point. I was injured. I was like getting ready for a day on the fucking couch. But it was just that ingrained in my brain that that's all I could control.
Wow.
And that was the only thing. If I wasn't good enough for this career, what was I good enough for? It was all I based my entire life around. Every decision I had made since the age of 5 was around being a ballerina. And I remember someone saying to me, I had been injured and I think I'd come back because of COVID, and I was severely depressed. Not that anyone really picked it up. And I was not coping by any means. And I had just started therapy in the US, had a few sessions, and then COVID became a thing, and I came back to Australia and stopped therapy. So I kind of just opened up the can of worms and then
and left it.
But
came home into the family again.
Came home and moved back in with mum and dad because the plan was to go back to America within a few months.
Yes.
I stayed there for the first 3 months of the pandemic because we were supposed to be opening Swan Lake at the Kennedy Centre, and I was like, fuck, I'm not missing that. I was, cast in the Swan Corps and a few other things.
Gosh.
And I'd been part of the whole development process because it was a new staging of Swan Lake. And I just been bumped into first cast and like,
Wow, Sarah.
then we got told, go home, we're shutting down for 2 weeks. So I went to my best friend, my housemate's family home down in Virginia because DC was getting scary with COVID. With COVID rates. So bumped off down there, stayed there for 3 months, and then Oz government was like, okay, we're thinking about shutting the borders. There's definitely going to be 2 more flights. So I flew out of America. I packed up the apartment I'd lived in for a few years, put it in a storage unit, took the suitcase I was allowed back to Australia, and I've still got the storage unit over there. Wow. It's just all being like donated. Like my quilt that my grandma who just passed made me is stuck in America, and all that stuff. And sorry, where was I going with this? Give me a sec.
Came back to Australia.
Yeah, so I came back to Australia with every intention of being back in America. Anytime. My head teacher over there, I left a basket in her office with bedding and stuff for the night I got back because I was like, I'm not going to be able to get to this. I might not be able to get to the storage unit straight away. So I had a basket in the office at the studio of the essentials I would need for the night I got back to America. Yeah, wow. Like that's how sure I was that I was going back. Yeah, wow. And then came back to Australia and of course went into hotel quarantine, which was 2 weeks of complete isolation while my life was falling apart. And it was the last week of the season in America, so I was still... once again, I felt like all I could control was my career in dancing. So I'd be up in the middle of the night taking class on Zoom from 2 a.m. With America in hotel quarantine. And then went back home and moved in with mum and dad thinking temporarily. They had downsized and moved out of our family home, and I haven't been back to America since.
Yeah, wow.
So, yeah.
Wow, Sarah. Thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a really powerful story. What do you think from here? Like, you're really young. Like, you are, I see you and I go, oh my gosh, you're just such a young person and your whole world is ahead of you. And I know you're at a critical juncture, like right now, making career decisions and really, making pivotal life choices right now. What can you speak to that?
I can. All I can really say is I know what I'm doing in this minute.
Yeah.
And that's about all.
Yeah.
I had surgery at the end of last year for my endometriosis, which was a very big deal for me, taking that time out of dance. I'd just been living with excruciating chronic pain for 6 years and performing through it because I thought that was my choice.
What you do, yeah.
So I had that, and that was only because I was already injured with a labral tear that resulted in chronic pain and trochanteric bursitis and gluteal tendinopathy with nerve pain. So that was about a year ago, and I'm still recovering.
Yep.
I haven't danced full time in a studio in a year. And for someone who that was my only coping mechanism for my life was movement. And a lot of this injury, I believe, was around my body holding my sexual assault trauma.
Yep.
Because it happened and then someone put their hand on my hip, and my hips were very much involved in my sexual assault. Someone put their hand on my hip and the whole scene played like a movie in my head, and that was when I pieced it together. Yep. I always knew that it had happened, but I was completely emotionally disconnected from it.
Yep.
And so I thought it was nothing.
Yep.
And I was, sitting on this treatment table, and it just flooded in, and my hip has never been the same since. And I'm still dealing with that. And it was just after that I probably started telling people. You were probably one of the first people I told, actually, Ness. Yeah. While we were sitting in that cafe down by the church. And
it was a big one.
It was a big one. I just met you. And that just goes to, I think we just clicked pretty quickly because, I don't know. I just talked to you.
Survivors have a thing.
We've talked about that before,
There's a thing. We have antenna for it. I think there's a knowingness. There's a vulnerability that we wear that, it's not the first, you're not the first person to share your story with me. It's a thing.
Yeah, even I've been on the bus before, headphones in, and I don't know if you guys get this, but it's a pretty regular thing for me. I'll just be on the bus or walking.
And someone will share?
Someone will just start telling me their story, or that they're having a really hard day, or...
Well, you're an empath.
Or what they're going through.
You're a really kind soul, and you exude kind, empathic vibe. And so people are going to love that. I mean, your little kids, when you hop into your Miss Sarah mode as dance teacher, those little children must just fall in love with you. You're like a human Barbie, mate.
I love them, though. It is the privilege of my life to be a dance teacher.
Yeah, they love you.
It was something I fell into. It was
Miss Sarah.
it was not the plan, but my whole thing with being a dance teacher, it wasn't that I wanted to teach dance. It was that I wanted to actively prevent the next generation, or at least a portion of them, from going through.
And you've talked about this with me. We've had some really robust conversations about your desire to help children not end up in traumatic situations and repeat the same kind of mentality that you went through with food and movement and in the dance world. And I think that having somebody like you in that space can only be a great thing.
It's so important to me, but it also fucks me up mentally.
Yeah.
Because it is a huge part of who I am. But like you said, Miss Sarah mode, I have many modes, and I'm quite a compartmentalised human, if you haven't.
Yeah, it's a survival technique.
Yep, figured that
It's
already.
a God-given survival technique, Sarah.
It is.
Wear it and go, thank you, Lord. I love this compartment right now. This shit's working for me right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm working on it. But Miss Sarah is very much a part, and nothing can touch her because nothing can get in the way of me protecting those kids. It's probably a little bit delusional, like to the point that there was someone who walked into a school hall when I was teaching there the other day, and it was just this random ass man. The fucking audacity of men just to walk in to a room with small children, and he starts looking around. So of course, being me, I step straight in front of all those kids so that I'm physically body in front of them and go, "Excuse me." And he goes, and this is like this big, muscly man. Like, 22-year-old little dweeb, and he's like, "Excuse me," he's like, "Oh, I'm looking for a switch or something," and I was,
bet you are, or you're looking at the little bodies.
Oh, I don't know, but he supposedly he was like working on the grounds.
Looking for a switch.
I know. He was like, "Oh, I'm trying to see if it's in here," and I was like, "Okay, well, I'm teaching a class in here, so you're gonna have to turn around and actually leave."
Yeah,
this
go
building.
you, Sarah. Clap, track, clap, track.
It's like
the crowd goes wild.
But like the fucking audacity! If I was to even get close to letting him in the room now, the kids, he would have had to show me his ID, proof that he needed to be on the site that day, proof that he was working for who he was working for. There's no way in hell he would have been near any of those kids without me also being present.
Yeah.
So like, Miss Sarah has to keep her shit together.
We love Miss Sarah.
Because I am there to protect.
Yeah.
I can 100% be a mama bear.
Yeah.
And
can you do growling mama bear now? Or a lion or something?
And I will go into the bat for those kids as many times as it takes.
If I had a little person, I would want Miss Sarah guarding my little kids. Because as a survivor, we have this absolute innate sense of wanting to protect. I know that. So you wait till you have a kid, Sarah.
Even my puppies.
It is amplified off the radar, and that's who you want caring for your children when you leave them to dance for 45 minutes. Honestly, go you.
It's that whole thing of wanting to protect them, but so much so that I have to keep kid Sarah within perspective and so close the whole time I teach. And that is not an easy thing because kid Sarah went through a lot.
Your own kid Sarah?
Yeah, my own kid Sarah. She went through a lot that I'm still trying to figure out.
So I wonder if Miss Sarah actually does protection for kid Sarah and
100%.
Therefore also protects those other 25 kids that you're caring for.
100%. And I've got to be careful of that too because I know that my story is not their story. And when I'm teaching, none of it is about me. I am there for them and for them only.
Stats say that 1 in 3, though, will be sexually abused.
Yeah. And I am very privileged that the kids talk to me.
Yeah.
Very much. I'm privy to different information at, different places that I teach. I'm also a qualified mental health first aider, and that's a role I take extremely seriously in any kind of work environment. But essentially, I have to hold kid Sarah there, and it can be exhausting. If I'm teaching for 5 hours on end, and I am keeping her so close but not actually being able to let her speak because I can't let that happen when I'm in that environment. I am letting her inform my decisions and choices like an assistant because I go through every facial expression, every word that comes out of my mouth when I teach is 100% thought through. How will this impact these kids? Because I am so terrified that I'm going to fuck up a kid mentally because I know the ramifications that has. So every ounce of energy I have when I'm teaching is making sure that I am protecting and caring for those kids. And I am so humbled to be in a position to do that and to watch them grow and to see their joy in their faces. But it's hard then when I go home at night and it's like hours of holding my inner child so close but not letting her speak, and then I get home and she needs to speak.
She needs to have a go.
And it was hard when I first started teaching because I just wanted to help everyone and I couldn't have the bubble. So I would physically take on board anything. So if I was teaching a kid who was really anxious, if I held her hand, by the time I got to the car, I would have IBS out to here because my body would be trying to suck the anxiety from her so that she didn't have it. Or even it got to the point where my body would start to replicate aches and pains or injuries of my students, because particularly if they were young, I mean, this is kind of not fully, but I would maybe get a little niggle, and I think it was my body trying to figure out how to fix it for them if they couldn't really
that's intense.
Really speak about it. So it's that, and it's the protecting them and the being there. But I'm very, very privileged to be able to do so, but also am very aware of doing it in a very professional way and
100%.
circumstance, and that I am there as their teacher, their teacher only. I am there to hold space, and I am there to keep everything.
And Sarah, for your own mental health, because we've touched on that now, do you have some really good strategies in place? Because you're in the middle of some really deep stuff.
I am in the middle of some really deep stuff, and I realised I never even fully answered your question before. So in terms of just to touch base on what I'm dealing with at the moment, after that injury and current injury, I was just about to return to the studio full time when all of a sudden a cyst decided to rupture inside of me a few weeks ago, and I ended up in hospital. And I am now looking at what place dance holds in my future. I will always love dance, but I don't love the dance culture. That needs to change. As beautiful as the dance art is, and I am looking at how I can keep those in my life and in what relationship I move forward with them, because I know right now I am exhausted. My body is exhausted. My mind is exhausted. I have always tried to be that person who had PTSD that no one knew had PTSD. The biggest compliment I got was, when people tell me, you have trauma? Because I would just do whatever it took. And I think I'm at a place now where I need to actually have PTSD. And I'm letting myself rest, and I'm letting my body regather, and I'm seeing if it's in a place where it can heal to a point where being back in a studio full time is a constructive thing. I will always have dance in my life in some capacity. But
I feel like this is like part A of a 2-part series with Sarah Rose.
Yeah. I think like that speaks to me really clearly about this thing where in being open and expressing things that we have gone through and the effect that they've had on us, that communicates to people, maybe there's someone who is where you were at age 16 or 17. In you being able to express that journey, even though you're still very much going through that journey, it's not a completed thing. Someone else can look at that and go, oh, there is life on the other side. Like you can get better. You can improve. You can keep working on it. This isn't life ending.
No.
And can be worked through. And there is, it does change things, but at the end of the day, you can control what you control, and you can't control what you can't control. And it's up to us with what we do with that.
No. Yeah. And to anyone out there, particularly any young dancers, if anybody, and I mean fucking anybody, tries to give you any kind of nutrition advice or body comment, turn to them and ask them where the fuck they got their nutrition degree from.
Yeah.
And if they don't have one, throw it away.
Good job.
Into the sun.
I'm still on my journey and getting there. And even after being in hospital, I had a bit of a relapse because I wasn't allowed to eat. This was just a few weeks ago. So I still have my days. So I wasn't allowed to eat in hospital. I remembered how safe and amazing that felt. And I'm just starting to come back through the other side of it now. So don't let your body learn that feeling empty is feeling safe. It can get better and you can work through it, but it's just easier not to go there in the first place.
It's great advice, Sarah.
Yeah, love that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's just such an amazing journey. Can we put up some photos of you in our show notes? Can we do that, Jonty?
Yeah, we'll have links to all your socials as well if people want to come and find you. To finish, I guess, what are you grateful for? I mean, we were talking before, you actually have a journal that you keep. Maybe you could tell us about that, because I love that idea as a tool for mindfulness. And
I do. So I have a gratitude journal. I have a very regimented morning routine that sets me up for the day ahead, and an evening routine because I'm not a good sleeper at all. And a gratitude journal is a very big part of both of those. So in the morning, I write 3 things that I'm grateful for, and then I pick an affirmation card, because mantras are huge for me. You asked me about mental health tools. That's one of my biggest ones, mantras and movement. And then at night, I write 1 thing that I was really grateful for that day that maybe happened. And so today I'm grateful for sitting here. I'm grateful for the support I have. I'm grateful for everything that Kid Sarah did to get me to this place.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for the future Sarah, who is going to have to pick up the pieces that I'm fucking up now, because there's plenty of those too. I'm grateful that I'm even now at a place where I know there's going to be a future Sarah. I'm grateful for the plants beside me, because there's life. You know, I'm grateful for this watch that was my late grandmother's. I'm just grateful to have you both in my life and have this space that you've created today. And I'm grateful for anyone who is listening to this today who any of this part of my story may have resonated with. I'm grateful for you for still being here and for getting through it.
Well, we're grateful for you, Sarah. Thank you for your story.
Supremely grateful.
Yeah, it's a kick-ass story. I can't wait for part B.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll pick this up at some point.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, and if people want to connect with you in the meantime, where can they find you? Is there a particular place you want to direct people online?
Yeah, the best place for me is probably Instagram. So it's sarah.grace.rose. And you see, I think my profile picture at the moment is one of my like headshots in a leotard. It should be pretty easy to find. I follow the Filthy Hope podcast. So if you look through the Filthy Hope followers as well, you'll find me there.
Yeah, wonderful.
Fantastic. And we'll have links down below as well. So we might wrap it up there. Again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. And welcome to anyone that's new. We've had a bit of an influx of listeners over the last couple of weeks, so we hope that this has been a really helpful conversation. I know it's been for us. I did a lot of listening today, which has been really refreshing for me. I've loved just sort of
I listened.
Taking part.
I did lots of listening also.
I just didn't do a whole lot of talking this week.
I didn't either. She did all the talking, brother.
Me talk? Never.
Yeah, just hand it over to the Sarahs, baby.
Not a talker at all. That wouldn't be me.
She can hold the floor.
But if you're watching, listening, and you have questions for Sarah or for us or related to anything, really, you can find us on socials or you can email us. All the information is down below. We've loved having your company and we love having your company, Sarah. So thank you. We might wrap it there. So I'm Jonty.
I'm Ness.
And I'm Sarah.
Sarah. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. We love you. We'll see you next week. Bye.
This is a prayer for the people who want to give up, who have been hurt beyond repair and cannot bear to see your face in anything. Find peace in letting go of the guilt that is in yours, and find hope in understanding. Life is not a game you have to win. Forgiveness overwhelming, salvation not deserving.